So today we're going to give you a tour of the Fatstack smoker. This guy is essentially a 500-gallon propane tank repurposed, put on a trailer, quite a bit of modification done to it, converted into what's called an offset wood-fired smoker. So what that means, wood fire is pretty self-explanatory. It's fired by wood. That's the main fuel source. It's where the heat and smoke comes from. Offset describes basically the flow of the smoker. So we have the firebox on one end, you've got the cook chamber in the middle, and then you've got the smokestack on the opposite end. So your heat source is off to the side, and then it's designed to pull smoke and heat through the cook chamber, cook whatever you got cooking in there, and then the smokestack, which we'll go over and take a look at in a minute, and you'll realize where the name Fatstack comes from. That's designed to pull a certain amount of air through the smoker to really maintain the correct heat and the correct level of smoke, correct quality of smoke, I guess, to where it really runs in that optimal temperature zone of between 250 and 350, depending on what it is that you're cooking. How I ended up with this was looking for a bigger smoker than what I had. I was running the 35-gallon pit barrel. Was starting to do some company events and some bigger events. And there's a couple of the guys that I work with that were like, hey, let's find a smoker, we'll help you fund it and get going with it. So reached out to Fatstack. They're based in Los Angeles, or we're based in Los Angeles. Kind of a long story there. They ended up going out of business, but we're in Los Angeles at the time. I was just looking at what they offered. They do all the way up to 1,000 gallon. I think 1,000 gallons is the biggest one they did, so twice as big as this. 500 gallons seemed like a pretty good sweet spot. They quoted me on basically this exact model. I got the insulated firebox, the 500-gallon smoke, or 500-gallon smoke chamber on a trailer is what I was looking for. They gave me a quote. They were about 6 months out manufacturing-wise, and then I would have had to arrange delivery from Los Angeles to central Idaho or eastern Idaho. About 2 weeks later, this guy came up, used on Craigslist, only 2 years old, in Salt Lake City, which is a 2.5 hour drive from here, and it was about $2,500 less than the quote I got for the new one. So jumped on that. Yeah, a buddy of mine from work helped fund it, so that got it here. That's how I ended up with this one. But yeah, it's almost the exact model that I had them quote. So when it came up for sale, already, no wait time on it, fairly local and quite a bit cheaper than buying it new. Jumped on it, and I've loved it. Like, I haven't thought of looking for any other smoker since I got this one. So let me give you a tour. We'll start at this end. This is the business end. This is the firebox. Essentially, you run it like you would a wood stove. So you've got your firebox here. It's insulated. So there's basically a round piece of a propane tank in here, and then it's filled with insulation. So this gets warm to the touch, but never super hot. The biggest benefit is in the winter time, you're not losing a lot of heat through the walls. So you burn a little bit less fuel. The side benefit is you get this nice flat top that you can set things on, and it doesn't get overly hot where you're at risk of burning things. So really, you start a fire here. You try to run as hot and clean a fire as you can. I usually leave that door about like that. If you close it all the way, it can start to choke the fire. If you leave it open too much, you can start to get some backdraft, and you start getting a lot of heat come out this way. So right about there tends to work. Keep the wood stack up here in the wintertime. That helps keep the wood warm. If it's frozen, it helps it thaw out. Just makes it easier to work with. It'll combust a little bit faster when it's warm and not frozen. So coming around this way, kind of a neat feature here. Their logo is offset from the cook chamber, so I'll store my axe there. The cook chamber here is 500 gallon. It's got an upper and lower racks. So if I'm doing chicken or ribs or anything that you want to run a little bit hotter, I'll run that on the upper racks. The lower racks is for your low and slow cooks, your brisket, pulled pork, things like that. It does have a heat zone where the heat from the cook chamber, where the heat from the firebox comes into the cook chamber right here, does run considerably hotter right there. So usually I'll avoid, if I'm doing any low and slow cooks, I'll avoid putting anything right there. But really from here back, it runs fairly consistent temperature wise. The back, I have the upper rack out here. Last cook I did, I slid that grate forward, but several different configurations the way you can set it up. It's nice that these top racks come out. It just gives you more, it's easier when you're moving stuff around on the bottom to not have the top racks in the way. It's made out of 1/4 inch steel, so it holds the heat really well. Some thinner smokers, as they heat up, they'll start to warp and your doors won't seal closed as well. You'll get some air gaps, which can possibly affect your airflow, or it might start pulling cold air in, which is counterproductive in what you're doing. But when this thing's running full tilt, all 3 of these temperature gauges will be within a 20-degree window of each other. So it actually runs fairly evenly, which is one of the things I like about it. And that's really a testament to how it's designed with the smokestack here. It is built to travel. This is made to take 2 events, which I've done a few times, and it's a blast hauling this thing around. You get a lot of interesting looks going down the highway, pulling what looks like a nuclear submarine behind you. But the top, I'll get up here and lift this up here. So this is basically an 8-inch Schedule 40 pipe. Previous owner welded a little extension on it. Not sure why he did that, but I haven't messed with it. It seems to work. And then there's just a flange here that I usually don't bolt that down. Just let it sit like that. It had a damper. I've always just run it wide open. He cut that off when he added the extension to it. Really the only reason you have a damper is just so you can close it off when you're not cooking. You don't get rainwater that goes down and inside your cook chamber. But the size of this, the length of it, all of that is sort of calculated to pull a certain amount of air through the smoker while it's cooking. And it's just convection. There's no fans or anything. It's just the convection from the heat coming out of here. Like if I put my hand here, I can actually feel air moving pretty quickly against my hand here. Which that all in turn, having the air moving through it, if you ever cook with a convection oven versus just a standard regular oven, it makes a big difference on how evenly everything cooks. And in my opinion, it actually affects the bark and the texture that you get on the meat, having some air moving across it versus just stagnant smoke sitting up against the meat while it's cooking. So that's the smokestack. I might at some point extend this and put the damper back on just to keep rainwater out, but honestly it doesn't rain that often here in Idaho, so I'm not too worried about it. So a couple of cool, just kind of neat features with this. They get the horseshoes. That's a door stop, so your door will sit right there. They got the 2 horseshoes there. The handle for the damper is also a horseshoe. Handle for the firebox is a horseshoe. It's just kind of a cool thing there. I might at some point sandblast this paint off and give it more of the kind of the rust patina look and do an kind of oil finish on it to protect it. It's just a little easier to maintain than the paint. One of the things though I do like, speaking of paint, follow me this way. The builder, they left the no smoking or open flames within 10 feet label on it, which I love. And ironically, when they welded this on, they cut off the no. So smoking or open flames permitted within 10 feet. So that's kind of a cool little feature there. Let's walk around the front of the trailer here. This is part of the design here. This is called the smoke collector. So you see how it's at the grate level. Grate meaning the grate where the food's on. It's a grate level, but it's at the level of the food grate that's in there, which means that naturally smoke rises, right? Heat goes up. So when the smoke comes into the cook chamber from the firebox, it's naturally going to want to run along the top of the cook chamber. This forces it to come back down to grate level before it goes up and out the chimney. So that actually creates some airflow that's moving more diagonally down across the cook chamber, which helps keep everything evenly helps everything cook more evenly versus just the smoke traveling across the top and really passing over what you've got in there. So that's a big part of the design. That's a lot better than you'll see some of the retail smokers that you can get at Home Depot where this is just coming off the top of the cook chamber, or it's just at an elbow coming out of the side from one small point. This helps be in the width of the smoke chamber, just helps have a nice even spread of smoke throughout. So that's a big part of the design. Yeah, keeps the fat stack running how it's supposed to. So so this has the wood basket, which is key if you're going to an event. This will hold enough wood to get through about a 12-hour cook. So if you're doing brisket, if you're doing larger brisket, sometimes that can go 16 to 18 hours. So sometimes you'll need to bring a little more wood than what's here. Usually for that, I'll just throw some wood in the smoker. And then when I get on site, I'll stack it on top of the firebox, and that usually gets me by. But this is, for 90% of what I'm doing, this holds enough wood to get me through any kind of event that I'm doing, which is awesome. Yeah, another reason I love the smoker is it's a complete package that you can hitch up to your trailer, and I've taken it to birthday parties, company events. We did a family reunion last year, and it's just fun to have it out. It looks cool, it's different, and it makes some dang good meat. So it's another key feature really to any smoker. Anytime you're doing beef or pork, there's usually a lot of fat involved when you're smoking something, which ends up as grease in the bottom of your cook chamber. So this has you got a little bit oozing out there. Just a quarter turn ball valve on I think an inch and a half pipe. So I'll usually have a bucket or something under there to catch the grease. But what that does, you've got a flaming hot fire on the other end. So the last thing you want is flammable grease sitting there right next to your cook chamber. So usually I'll set it up to where it's actually sloped away from the firebox towards the tongue of the trailer. And I just do that with the trailer jack, just lower that down. So grease flows this way, and this allows you to drain it. In the wintertime, this doesn't stay hot enough to keep the grease liquid. So if it's closed when I'm starting the cook and any grease gets in there, it'll actually freeze up. So usually when that happens, I'll just open it up. I'll get a propane torch under it to warm it up, and then once it starts flowing and you get the hot grease going through there, that fixes it. So, but yeah, that's just kind of cool. Just really industrial looking. It's literally just a, I think, 1.25 inch ball valve that you'd buy at the plumbing section at Home Depot. So something I might add in the future. This is something that after I bought this, Fatstack had actually started adding to their designs. Depending on what you're cooking, what the humidity's like, what type of wood you're using, sometimes I'll have a water pan that sits, there's a little shelf right in here that sits there, and actually the water evaporates and it just adds some more moisture to the air as it's going through. I haven't found that it makes that big of a difference on most of the things I'm cooking. There's people that swear by it. But what I would add would be basically a piece of pipe that goes through here and goes right over where that water pan is, so I can add water from the outside without having to open this up, move the grates out of the way, and get in there with a pitcher and try to fight through the smoke and put water in this. Just having a piece of pipe fitting that comes out here that you can just pour water straight into. So I might at some point add that. Really the last couple of years I haven't even used a water pan, and honestly I don't notice that big of a difference. I might try it again, and that might be another video that we do where we A/B test with and without the water and kind of see if it does make a difference at all. There's a lot of things that people do that I've tried that add additional steps that at the end of the day don't make a big enough difference to be worth it. And really, if you just let this thing do what it was designed to do, and you run the fire the way that the fire should be run, you really can't go wrong. It's the way it's built, the way it's designed. It's really laid out really well, and so far I've liked just about everything that's come off of it that I've cooked, and it doesn't take that much messing around to get everything dialed in. It really is designed well, and it does what it's supposed to do. So I'm happy with it. So the trailer that it was on is custom built by Fatstack. They built it as part of the overall build. It's integral to the smoker itself. So it has two 3,500 pound axles, so it's a 7,000 pound trailer, dual axle trailer. No trailer brakes on it. It's not quite heavy enough where it needs it, but it's got the tail lights. It's a roadworthy trailer. I towed this up from Salt Lake, and he had towed it up from Los Angeles to Salt Lake, so it rides really well on the freeway. One thing that I don't I shouldn't say I don't like about it. One thing that does take a minute to get used to is everything that's heavy on the trailer is towards the front. So it's definitely a lot more weight on these wheels than those wheels on the other side. So when you are going 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, if you do get a little bit of a shift, you can feel a weight difference. It pulls one way a little bit more than the other. It's noticeable, but it's not at a level that's concerning. One of the other things with the trailer, when the smokestack is down, I do have to put a strap over it because you get some wind going and it'll start to rattle a little bit. But yeah, it's built with 2-inch, I think 2x3 rec tube maybe. But yeah, it rides well. It's easy to, it's balanced well. It's easy to, I guess, front to back balance well. Not so much side to side, but tows well. It's really easy to back it in and get where you need to go with it. There you have it. That's the 500-gallon offset smoker from Fatstack. See you in the next one.